It all started with whispers of crude jokes about her body. One of them said it loud enough for her to hear. "I bet that wrench is hiding a whole bakery there." She told them to stop. She said, "No." But they didn't like it when they were told this. So they surrounded her, laughed, and when she tried to leave, they grabbed her and tried to rip her pants off in front of everyone. But when the fabric tore and exposed her lower back, the laughter stopped. They froze because what they saw didn't just silence them, it horrified them. Do you want to know what made 4 trained soldiers fall to their knees, begging for mercy? Write in the comments where you are watching from and subscribe. After all, violence doesn't stop simply by being exposed. It ends when justice prevails. The desert sun was not merciful that day. The Alpha Ridge was red hot from the unbearable heat, which turned metal tools into brands. And every breath was like swallowing sand. The air was tinged with heat waves, and the smell was undeniably military. Hot brass, diesel exhaust, and that mixture of sweat and engine oil that soaks into your skin. The generators hummed incessantly, and only the sharp crackle of distant rifle shots interrupted their roar. Amidst all this controlled chaos, one woman worked silently. Alina Torres didn't need to introduce herself. She moved with quiet precision. Her gray t-shirt was clinging to her body with sweat, and her brown cargo pants looked practical and worn. She knelt by the scaffolding, diligently and expertly spreading concrete around the anchor bolts. Her fingers slid over each joint as if she were reading text carved into the steel. No unnecessary effort, just the quiet precision of a man who knew that life depended on the smallest details. Most of the soldiers passing by hardly saw her. Just another contractor fixing equipment that will break down again next month. She was background noise in the endless cycle of repairs that kept the base running. But under a canopy of shadows, 4 infantry recruits decided that this would be the entertainment for today. "Tell me that woman can't work," one muttered, nudging his friend. "Look at her figure when she bends over." The others chuckled roughly and humorously. "Ex-military or some lost fitness trainer, you think?" Another smirked. "Maybe she was just made for this job." You know what they say, curves like a contractor's are designed for torque. Their laughter turned sharp. There was something more evil in it. Alina didn't flinch or look in their direction. She shifted her position, tested the texture of the concrete with experienced fingers, then took 2 shoves to the left to begin the next section. Her knee pad, worn on purpose, not for show, glinted in the sun as she lowered herself into a new working stance. The man watching her intently said nothing. Corporal Onlock stood with his arms crossed over his chest and his jaw clenched, as if considering an idea. He was in his early 30s, and he had the confidence that came with wearing chevrons without ever having to endure any testing. His uniform was impeccable, but his eyes held the sharp glint of someone always searching for the right angle. It had been a tough month. He'd failed the NCO course, missed out on a promotion, and now he was looking for someone to take his anger out on. "You know what?" Locke said. "We need to check what she's doing. Make sure she's following safety regulations." One private hesitated. "She seems to know what the corporation does." "Looks can be deceiving," Locke replied, already heading toward her. "And we have a responsibility to ensure civilian personnel adhere to established regulations." The others followed, swayed by a familiar feeling, young soldiers eager for a confrontation. They spread out slightly as they approached, not completely surrounding her, but close enough to feel their presence. Alina felt the change even before she heard the clatter of their boots. Something in the silence behind her changed, became sharper, more focused, almost predatory. She glanced over her shoulder to spot 4 men approaching with a swagger that always meant trouble. She went back to work, but her shoulders tensed slightly. Her posture adjusted, her weight distributed purposefully. When her boot drew a line in the dust, she curved like a hook instead of walking straight. Small changes, unnoticeable to most, but noticeable to anyone familiar with real training. Because Alina Torres wasn't just some infrastructure specialist. And once these soldiers decided to put pressure on her, they would understand what it really meant. The standoff hadn't started with violence. It all started with paperwork. Alina was adjusting a cable joint when the locked shadow fell across her work. She'd already noticed the kink twice, the one that could jam the cartridges and cause a buoy fire. "I need to see your clearance paperwork," Log said, his voice mock authoritative. Alina stood up. "My clearance is valid, 2 levels higher than required. New security protocols require screening of all individuals not in uniform." She silently handed over her folder. Official documents, duly stamped with clearance codes, should have put an end to this. Locke studied them like an expert. "It says here, infrastructure assessment does not include electrical systems. Infrastructure includes all support systems. Updated 3 months ago." One private chuckled. "She knows the rules better than you." Corporate. Locke didn't flinch. "Regulations have been updated again. New electromagnetic security protocols. Unauthorized use of electronics near sensitive systems is prohibited. I need you to confirm that you're not carrying any contraband devices." The desk sergeant looked up and frowned. "Locke, what the hell is this?" "Routine security check, Sergeant," Locke replied calmly before Alina could say anything. "Phones, recording equipment. Transmitters may be hidden in clothing. Full compliance check required." Conversations nearby died to whispers. People began to sense something was wrong. Full body searches. Upper body searches. Standard procedure for unscreened employees. It was a lie, and everyone knew it. But Locke was counting on her not wanting to make a scene. A private standing nearby picked up the phone. "Maybe we should film that." "Take it away," Rodriguez barked. But the child only smirked. Alina stood motionless for a long time, looking at the boy who thought he could embarrass her in front of a crowd. She could have called the sergeant, demanded an explanation from his superior, or just walked away. Instead, she put the folder down and began unbuttoning her pants. "My God, she's really doing that," the child whispered. She dropped them to her knees and straightened up. Posture steady, expression unreadable. The soldiers watched with crude interest. "Satisfied?" she asked. The Locke's smile widened. "Turn around." Full inspection. As Alina turned, the afternoon sun hit her lower back, and the mood instantly changed. These weren't decorative ink. 5 thick horizontal marks ran parallel to her spine, just above her waist, and suddenly no one was laughing anymore. Each mark was unique, precise, angular. Like technical schematics etched into flesh, the silhouette of a gas mask, satellite coordinates, a syringe streaked with lightning, the outline of a drone, and a skull in night vision goggles. Most of the onlookers had no idea what they were seeing. The boy was still filming. "Look at the tattoos on his back. They're probably the simplest he has." But Rodriguez felt a chill run through him. He'd seen similar symbols before, in old photographs his grandfather had hidden. Unit identifiers for groups that officially didn't exist. At that moment, Sergeant Major Darius Hurley appeared around the corner, accompanied by 2 officers. His eyes narrowed as he watched the scene before him. The tablet in his hand hit the concrete with a sharp crack that echoed throughout the work area. The officers accompanying him glanced at him in confusion, then followed his gaze to the woman standing half-naked in the center of their maintenance bay. "Sweet Mother of God," Hurley whispered, because these markings weren't random. They were the results of missions conducted as part of Operation Ghost Vector. Secret operations were so highly classified that even those with clearance weren't supposed to know they were being conducted. Each symbol represented a specific type of mission: chemical weapons disposal, satellite reconnaissance, biological threat neutralization, unmanned combat vehicle development, close quarters elimination. Hurley was a staff sergeant in Afghanistan, coordinating intelligence from Brem. He'd read the progress reports before they were destroyed. He knew of missions gone awry and of operatives presumed dead who returned with intelligence that averted global catastrophes. He also knew that these agents had been given new papers and strict orders to disappear. Alina Torres wasn't just a contractor. She was a ghost returned from the darkness. The kind of phantom defense agencies created when heroes had to disappear for the sake of national security. New identities, clean records, civilian positions that allowed them to use their skills while remaining unnoticed. But the scars remembered what the papers had erased. Locke was still grinning, still playing to his audience. "Do you see anything you'd like to report?" "Mom." The child zoomed in using his phone. This is definitely going online. Alina started to turn calm and professional, as if she were carrying out a task given to her by someone truly important. That's when Hully found his voice. Halt, corporal. The command pierced the noise of the workbench like a blade through silk. All conversation died down. All instruments fell silent. Even the distant crack of rifle shots seemed to fade, acknowledging the authority of that tone. Locke spun around, his expression changing shades of pale as he realized who was watching him. "Sir, just conducting a routine security check in accordance with the new." I said, "Stand back." Hurley's voice carried the weight of a man who had made life-or-death decisions in places where the wrong decision meant body bags and folded flags. He walked across the concrete floor with measured steps, his eyes never leaving Alina's face. The two officers following him, a captain and a lieutenant, retreated. They didn't fully understand the situation, but they remembered the expression on their sergeant major's face. It was the same expression he wore when he received secret orders from higher command. Hurley said quietly, his voice completely different from the commanding tone he'd used on Locke. "You can get dressed." She nodded and calmly pulled on her pants, buttoning them with the same measured precision with which she had filmed. No shame, no rage, no demands for an apology. Only the quiet dignity of someone who had endured far worse than public humiliation and survived every time. The boy still held the phone in his hand. "Sir, should I send this footage?" "You will delete this recording immediately," Hurley interjected, "or I will court-martial you for recording classified data without authorization." "Classified? But she's just a contractor." "Delete it. Now." The boy's hands shook as he fiddled with his phone. After a few hesitant clicks, the video disappeared, and he shoved the device into his pocket as if it burned. Once Alina was fully dressed, Hurley stepped forward, so close that his next words were meant only for her. "Goster officially disbanded in 2013, he said quietly. "Officially," Alina replied. "There are no maintenance records for your operations." "That's the point." Hurley studied her face, noticing what others missed. How skillfully her eyes followed every movement without even looking. The way she stood, not tense but ready. Every inch of her still functioning, as if the mission had never ended. The subtle scars on her knuckles, the marks of close combat, the way she stood with her weight perfectly distributed, ready to move in any direction at a moment's notice. "You shouldn't exist," Hurley said. "This base doesn't have even half the equipment, but here we are." That made him stop because she was right. Test Site Alpha was a storage area for experimental weapons and prototype technology, things that were listed in budgets but not in official records, unless her clearance went deeper than the documents indicated, unless she was exactly the one he now suspected. Hurley turned slowly, looking at the group of soldiers who were watching. Now they all realize that they have just gotten themselves into something much more rewarding. Locke looked like he wanted to dissolve into the concrete. The boy was as pale as desert sand. Rodriguez looked back and forth between Hurley and Alina, as if trying to piece together a puzzle from the missing pieces. "Everybody out," Hurley said. "But sir, we have scheduled maintenance," Rodriguez began. "I don't care if the Secretary of Defense has to change his oil. Clear this area." He glanced around the group. "Anyone who tells about what just happened will be washing dishes in the cafeteria for the rest of their service." The soldiers scattered like a catastrophe in a hurricane. Locke tried to stay, to explain, to save what was left of his power. "Sir, I was just following protocol." The captain handed over new security measures. Hurley's voice dropped to a whisper. Why did he become even more dangerous? "Come to my office at 1500 hours. Bring your manager. Bring the head of your department. We're going to talk about what protocol actually means." The Locke's face turned white as a sheet. Meeting Sergeant Mayor, especially in front of your superiors, usually meant paperwork that would plague you for the rest of your military career. When the area was clear and only Alina, Hurley, and his two officers remained, the sergeant major took out his phone and dialed a number that was not listed in any directory. "This is Hurley from the Alpha Test site. I need an urgent background check on Alina Torres. Contractor credentials. Background check. Priority Alpha." He listened. And with each passing second, his face grew harder. It's clear. What was the skill level of her previous assignments? Hit. Understood. What about her current combat status? Another pause. Understood. And what if someone hypothetically reveals her fake identity? The last pause. Understand. Thank you. He ended the call and turned to Alina, who had quietly taken out her tools and was examining the cable compartment as if nothing had happened. They tell me you have clearance levels that I'm not even authorized to ask about, he said. Then don't ask. But I can offer you any support you need to complete your work. She looked up from her equipment. I just need to finish the repairs and submit the report. Everything is like any other day. After what just happened, you want to keep working after that. This job needs to be done right. And that, Hurley realized, told him everything that he needed to know who she really was. The captain stepped forward. A look of obvious confusion crossed his face. Sir, I don't understand what just happened. You don't have to understand, Captain, Hurley interrupted. You just need to make sure that Ms. Thors has all the necessary resources to complete her mission and that no one else will interfere with her. For the next 3 hours, Alina worked with a quiet precision that caught the attention of the experienced officers. She didn't just fix systems, she understood them deeply. Stress points have been discovered that no diagnostics will reveal for another 1,000 hours. Design flaws that entire teams of engineers had overlooked were discovered. She worked as a person who kept systems running in places where failure meant death. The one who made repairs on the battlefield with improvised tools under fire, who gave her approval for equipment that she would later have to trust her life to because her approval wasn't written in ink on a form. It was a promise written in her own blood. And rumors began to spread throughout the base. Military gossip always spreads quietly through repair crews and replacements, and each retelling adds weight. By the time Alina had completed half the repairs, the senior sergeants were already finding excuses to walk through her work area. Master Sergeant Williams, who had been servicing military vehicles since before most of the current unit had enlisted, stopped to watch her work on the target release mechanism. At first, he didn't say a word, just watched as she traced the vibrational patterns with her fingertips, pinpointing problems the instruments might have missed. The bearing is wearing unevenly, she said without looking up. Possibly for several weeks already. Williams opened the maintenance logs on his tablet. Indeed, numerous reports have noted inconsistent target rotation during live-fire exercises. Nothing so critical that you have to cancel your workout. But this is enough to make experienced shooters nervous. She didn't just diagnose the problem. She understood the system well enough to sense things the machines couldn't yet tell. And Williams knew exactly what that meant. How did you discover this without running the system? Metal fatigue has its own character. It can be felt by the vibration of the body. She walked up to the junction box. Her fingers slid over the wire connections with the practiced ease of someone who has learned to detect exposed wires in complete darkness. Is your power relay also overheating? It's probably been several months already. Williams opened the electrical maintenance logs. The relay was marked as requiring replacement during the next major overhaul, which was scheduled to take place in a few weeks. However, temperature data showed that destruction was occurring faster than predicted. We are monitoring the situation. How do you know? Thermal expansion, she said. The housing compresses differently when the component is subjected to load. She guided his hand to where the relay housing met the mounting bracket. Feel the change in vibration frequency. He works harder than he should. Williams nodded slowly, without saying a word. He had been servicing military systems for over 30 years, but she had just diagnosed a fault in seconds simply by touch. And these kinds of skills are not acquired from textbooks. But he learned something he never thought was worth paying attention to. This wasn't textbook learning. This was field knowledge gained in places where a single equipment failure could cost lives. Hurley watched from a distance as she discovered a micro crack in a support bracket that the regular crew had missed, noted a corroding safety cable that could cause hydraulic failure under load, and discovered a loose mounting bolt that could cause catastrophic system failure during the next high-tempo exercise. Each episode was documented with meticulous care. No show, no drama, just the calm, practiced precision of a man who knew the stakes. Someone who understood that a person's life depends on the precision and accuracy of the smallest details. When she finished, her report was clear, precise, and included 6 recommendations. Each one was aimed at eliminating a potential error that no one else had thought to consider. Williams analyzed the results and paused for a moment. Then he signed not just as a witness, but with the quiet respect of a man who knew he had just learned something from a man far beyond the pale. His signature carried weight. 30 years of service in the military, for combat missions, and a reputation for never approving anything that might fail when soldiers needed it most. He said quietly as she gathered her tools. Outstanding work. Coming from Iliams, it was rare praise. Those that were repeated at management meetings and recalled during certification. Hurley read her report slowly twice. Then he looked at her with something close to awe. "Where did you actually serve?" he asked. "A place that is not on the official maps," she replied. "What kind of work do you do? Something that is not in the field regulations?" He nodded, realizing now that some questions shouldn't have been asked, even those who have permission to ask such questions. The duty sergeant stepped forward with a completed work form. "Ma'am, could you sign the inspection report?" Alina took a pen and wrote her name in the same precise handwriting she used in the registration log. But the sergeant noticed more than just the signature, the way she held her pen, the small scar along her index finger, the calluses formed from years of working with weapons and precision instruments in harsh conditions. He had seen hands like that before on Special Forces personnel who serviced equipment that officially didn't exist. "Thank you, ma'am," he said quietly. Professional work. As Alina slung her tool bag over her shoulder, Holly was already making another call, this time to his commander, informing him that the contractor had been granted unrestricted access to the base and that any employee who showed disrespect would receive additional training on the proper handling of classified personnel. When she was ready to leave, Hurley walked her to the exit. "You don't have to come back here," he said. "I can make sure that your next missions do not involve soldiers who are not knowledgeable about this matter." Alina slung her tool bag over her shoulder and looked back at the place where she had been humiliated, stripped, and ridiculed by men young enough to be her sons. "I'll be back next week for a recheck," she said. "Why?" She fell silent. Her gaze slid towards the training fields, where young soldiers learned to trust their lives to equipment maintained by people they never knew. Because these children need to understand that the quiet ones have stories too, and sometimes those stories mean more than the loud ones. She turned and walked into the hot desert. Her steps were firm and confident on the concrete path. Behind her, the work area had returned to its usual rhythm of instruments, voices, and preparation, but something subtle had changed in the space. A new current flowing beneath the surface. The kind of change that will be noticeable in barracks conversations and morning briefings for weeks, maybe even months. At 3 p.m., Corporal Locke stood outside Staff Sergeant Hurley's office, wearing his dress uniform immaculately, but his hands were shaking slightly. His superior, Staff Sergeant Mills, stood next to him, and his expression indicated that this meeting would not end well for anyone. "Remember," Mills said quietly, "tell the truth. Don't try to justify what happened." The door opened. Hurley's assistant gestured for them to enter. The meeting lasted 25 minutes. When Locke came back out, his face was pale and his career path had changed dramatically. 8 weeks additional service, mandatory training on how to properly handle classified personnel, a formal letter of reprimand in his personnel file, and a strong recommendation that he reflect long and hard on what leadership really means. But the real consequences have already begun to spread across the base like ripples in water. By the evening dinner, every foreman and maintenance supervisor had already heard one version or another of what happened at the Alpha Test site. The details changed, but one truth remained the same. The contractor was humiliated by junior staff, and the contractor turned out to be someone whose track record was hidden under layers of secrecy, the existence of which most people did not even suspect. That evening, Staff Sergeant Williams found Locke in the Enlisted Men's Club, staring into a glass of beer that he had never touched. "Do you mind if I sit down?" Locke shrugged slightly. Williams sat down opposite him. "Do you realize what you did today, son?" Everyone asks me about this all the time because everyone wants to make sure you learn from it. He paused, lowering his voice. That woman you disgraced, she's the kind of person this whole base exists to support. The one who does the work that allows the rest of us to sleep peacefully at night. Locke looked up. How do you know this? 30 years of work in this field allows you to learn to notice the signs. The way she used her tools, the way she identified issues we'd completely overlooked, the way she stood her ground when you tried to break her. Williams paused, but what struck me most was Staff Sergeant Hurley's reaction. I've never seen him like this before. Locke was silent for a long time. What should I have done differently? Ask questions before making assumptions. Treat her with the same respect you would want to be treated with if you were in her shoes. Remember that uniforms are meant to symbolize more than just power over others. Later, Rodriguez found Locke standing by a window overlooking the training area, where the night shift was preparing equipment for the next day's exercises. You know what you did today, right? Yes. Rodriguez asked quietly. All this was explained to me. Good thing, because my grandfather served in Vietnam in military intelligence. He told me about people like her, those who did work that never officially happened, in places we never officially went, against threats we never officially faced. Rodriguez paused, watching the repair crews work under the floodlights. He said that they can always be recognized, not by medals or stories, but from the way they moved, the things they noticed, and the things they never said out loud. The way they moved, the way they watched everything without pretending to watch, the way they acted, it was as if they had gone through the Adligaback. Locke was silent. Today you humiliated a war hero, Rodriguez said. Someone who has probably saved more lives than you could ever imagine. And you did it because you thought she was vulnerable. How was I supposed to know? That's the whole point. You won't know who you're dealing with until you take the time to find out. And by that time, it may be too late to change your first impression. At the far edge of the base, the desert wind caught the hem of Alina's shirt as she approached the gate, lifting it high enough to show the top edge of those missionary shields, like history etched into her skin. The guard who accompanied her departure was a senior sergeant. 25 years of military service is enough experience in covert operations to recognize certain insignia. When he saw them, he didn't ask questions. She simply nodded respectfully and handed her back her ID. Have a good evening, ma'am. And you, Sergeant. 3 weeks later, when the next civilian contractor arrived to service the equipment, the atmosphere at the Alpha test site had changed. The crew was professional, polite, and helpful. They asked about qualifications rather than assuming, and offered support rather than creating barriers because word had spread. That's how it always happens with important lessons on a military base. Quietly, firmly, and in such a way that no one forgets them. During shift briefings and maintenance meetings, during NCO-level discussions, and casual conversations over coffee. This didn't spread as gossip, but in principle, treat people with respect until they show they don't deserve it. Ask questions before you judge. And always remember, you never really know who you're dealing with until it's too late to change your attitude towards them. Master Sergeant Williams made this part of his orientation for new recruits. Not the incident itself that occurred at the Alpha test site, but what is the lesson here? This quiet competence deserves recognition. Behind this modesty often lies experience, and the fact that the military works best when people care about each other, not for anyone to push around. Petty Officer Hurley kept Alina's maintenance report on his desk for months. Not because it was anything extraordinary, although her recommendations had prevented 3 equipment failures, but he wanted it to symbolize something his people remembered. Perfection doesn't come with pipes. He shows up, does his job, and leaves everything better than he found it. Somewhere in the civilian world, Alina Torres continued her quiet mission. Her service remained classified. Her sacrifices remained unrecognized by the public. Her stories are absent from any official records. But she left behind a learning center full of people who will never again mistake silence for weakness, who would ever again think that a person working alone can be safely ignored, because sometimes the most dangerous people are those who have nothing to prove. Sometimes real heroes never attend award ceremonies. And sometimes, when you think you know exactly who you're dealing with, you realize you didn't know anything at all. Have you ever seen someone completely underestimated because they chose silence over noise? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We read every comment and respond to the best of our ability. If this story reminded you of someone who never got the recognition they deserved, please like and subscribe for more daily stories about heroes hiding in plain sight. And if you know anyone who has ever been ridiculed, ignored, or rejected simply because they don't live up to someone's expectations, send them this video, because what happened at Alpha Test Site didn't get a second glance. It didn't make headlines. It wasn't a trending moment, but for those who saw it, everything changed. Your next story is waiting for you. Just tap the screen. See you tomorrow. At the same time, another story about ordinary people doing extraordinary things. Thanks for watching, thanks for subscribing, and thanks for remembering respect isn't earned by volume, it's earned by character. M.